How to create complex technical books with FrameMaker, Part 1, Book Organization and Workflow. Hi, I'm Rick Miller, author and publisher at pulpfreepress.com. I use FrameMaker to create complex technical books, user manuals, and a handful of other products that I find other word processors are just not up to the task of producing. FrameMaker is an extremely powerful content creation platform. It has two modes, unstructured and structured. In unstructured mode, you can put anything anywhere you want on a page. It's my preferred mode of using FrameMaker. It has a steep learning curve, as does the other mode. Structured mode allows you to impose more structure on both the document itself and the formatting of that document. And use XML/DITA, and DITA stands for the Darwin Information Typing Architecture. Quite complex, and as you can probably guess, a much steeper learning curve than unstructured. Although FrameMaker in and of itself is kind of hard to wrap your head around if you're new to it. Everything in this video related to content organization applies to both modes. I'm not going to get into advanced formatting during this discussion. Why use FrameMaker? Number one reason, complex technical books. Nothing, and I mean nothing, comes close. FrameMaker excels at multiple volumes, multiple chapters, complex layouts, tricky paragraph numbering, table of content, list of tables, list of figure, index generation, and frames. FrameMaker empowers your creativity. And did I mention frames? If you haven't seen frames in action, boy, you're really missing it. I find Microsoft Word indispensable. Like outlining, it's got one of the most powerful outliners in the universe as far as I know. Letters, reports with not too complex graphics and simple layouts. If you're going to write a Kindle book, if I was going to write a Kindle book, if you've ever looked at like the AWS specifications or for Amazon specifications for a Kindle book, use Microsoft Word, man. It's probably the best thing you got. Forget complex layouts. If you've ever wrestled with Microsoft Word, you know what I'm talking about. It's like wrestling with an octopus. FrameMaker does what's impossible to do in Word, layout and structure-wise. What exactly is a book in FrameMaker? A book is a collection of manually and automatically generated FrameMaker documents related by a .book file. A book controls numbering, number formatting, and material ordering. A FrameMaker book can have multiple volumes, chapters, sections and subsections, page, paragraphs, footnotes, right? Your book controls how these things are treated or numbered and how those numbers are formatted, as well as the arrangement of the sections of the book. I don't know if you can see it in this slide, but in the toolbar above the book graphic, you can see up arrow and down arrow, excuse me. If you wanted to rearrange the logical ordering of the book, you just select one of the, let's say you took chapter 15 and you wanted to move it up, right? Then you could arrange the book that way. I consider there to be three types of content that goes into the structure of a FrameMaker book: conceptual, logical, and physical. The conceptual part is the subject outline, logical is the actual FrameMaker book itself, and then the physical is where these elements that are in this FrameMaker book, where they located on your hard drive. From a structure. And then you'll see there's like a little thumb of the Chicago Manual of Style. This also plays to influence the logical organization. So let's talk about these in a little bit more depth in the following slides. When I'm working out the ideas for a book, I start with the subject outline. That's what I call the conceptual organization of the book. I use Microsoft Word for this because it is superior to, like I said earlier, any tool on the market that I'm aware of. I always work from a subject outline. It's what I want to say and the order I want to say it in. It allows me to, put the stuff down in an outline format, rearrange really quickly with Microsoft's Outliner, and add notes or learning objectives or major topic points in each of the sections or chapters of the book. And once I get the conceptual organization, that then maps to the logical flow of the material in the book. And let's talk about that next. By logical organization, I mean the FrameMaker book structure. It's influenced by the subject outline, as we saw previously, and a formal book structure. So when I first started creating my books back in the early 2000s, I used the Chicago Manual of Style. The Chicago Manual of Style has a great section on what are the parts of a book, right? And being new to publishing, I didn't know all the different parts of the book. I mean, I knew that there's a table of contents and an index and stuff like that. And, probably most books in the world are fine with that. But I didn't know about title pages and the technical terms of verso and recto, right? And those types of terms. And when I was new to publishing and I was actually publishing physical volumes, right, like hard copy books, I needed to know how these terms were, what these terms meant when I was dealing with the printers, right? But the structure of the book is laid out clearly. You can take and use what you want. I took some of the structure from the Chicago Manual of Styles section on book structure. Like, for example, the order of front matter, preface, what comes first, how do you number those sections? That goes into the logical structure of the book, and the FrameMaker book, allows you to then put that structure on that book, right? So finally, in the next section, we'll talk about how we organize physically the structure of the book. The third type of content organization is what I refer to as physical organization or file structure. Like, where are these artifacts located on your computer, right? And, so it makes it easy to find, right? The file structure imposes order on book artifacts. There should be a mapping between the logical order, for the most part, right, in your FrameMaker book, so that the preface is located in this folder, appendices are located in that folder, chapter 1, all associated content and graphics are in that folder, the master book file is in that folder, the front matter is in that folder. The physical folder structure is important because if you get this right, then it makes it easy to go from, say, a first edition of a book to a second edition of a book, because you will find out here when I get into actually creating a book in FrameMaker, the content that's in the book is relative to where the master book file is, right? So if you can keep things tightly organized, then when it comes time to create a new edition, what you do is you just duplicate the current directory structure, make a new folder with for the new edition, and then you just start adding the new material, editing, etc. And you're in business, right? And that just ties everything together. So let's assume that you have your subject outline, you know exactly what you want to say and the order that you want to say it in, and you're ready to actually create the book. I say start with the folder structure first and get that started, right? You may not know how many chapters. You have a good idea, right? But as you work on your book, this will evolve, right? So you start with your folder structure. Like I say, it's going to map to the logical organization of your FrameMaker book. It's going to evolve, right? So name the root folder, the book's name and edition, like whatever the name of your book is. Like my book, one of my books is C# for Artists, second edition. So the name of that folder is, or third edition, I should say, book name _ and then edition, right? And then within that folder, there'd be start with the following two subfolders, master _ book _ file. You can name these folders whatever your preference is, but I don't like to put spaces in my file names, right? It makes it easier to port these things between Windows and Macintosh. So master book file, and then chapter _ n, and it can be a lowercase n or uppercase n. I use lowercase n here. And then once you get those two folders, then we're going to flesh out the chapter N folder here in the next slide. In the chapter N folder, add two subfolders, one called Content, the other one called Figures. In the Content folder, you will place your chapter N FrameMaker file when you create it. In the Figures folder, obviously, if you have illustrations for your book, those graphics will go in Figures. This structure, simple as it is, you can expand it if you want. You can just put everything in Content, but I recommend you have this separate Figures folder, because then as you have new additions to your book, then you can just create subfolders to differentiate between first edition figures, second edition figures, etc. The Content, I found that once I create that FrameMaker file, I'm only going to be updating that FrameMaker file, right? So that usually there's never a separate copy made of that, but I'll get into that here more as we progress. Okay, now it's time to create the book file. So in FrameMaker, create a new book and save it in the master book file folder. Also, when you automatically generate the table of contents or list of figures or list of tables or the index, those automatically generated files will be placed in this master book file, because that's where the book file is located. Once you've created the book file, it's time to create the chapter N file. So in FrameMaker, create a new document, call it chapter N, and save it to the chapter N/content folder. Now the purpose of chapter N is to work on layout and formatting. The formatting is used to generate contents, table of contents, list of tables, list of figures, and index. And once you have created the file, even before you work on any formatting or layout, go ahead and then add that file to the book. And I'll show you how to do this in the demo. Like I said in the previous slide, you want to work on layout and formatting, and that's the purpose of chapter N. So you create your layout ideas, you work on paragraph and character formatting. Once you get this worked out in chapter N, you can copy to other chapters, or actually what you do is you open up two chapters and you import formats from chapter N into the new chapter. They can be imported from books that you either already have, or if you could find FrameMaker stuff online for formatting. But don't try to flesh out everything. If you're doing this from scratch, it can take quite a while to get everything. And in fact, I've worked on books for a year, and I was still tweaking formats to get things right, all the way up until right before I published the book. Right. So this is an iterative process. Do enough to get started so that you can generate your table of contents or list of figures or list of tables and an index, right? And then once you get those artifacts in the book to the point where you like the way they look from a layout perspective and formatting, then start adding the other content to your book. But always, whenever you make as you progress, I should say, you're going to find that you can't think of every formatting scenario in chapter N when you first start off, right? So for example, let's say that some chapters, I write books about computer programming languages, right? So some chapters have source code examples, some don't, right? So when I was creating my early books, it wouldn't be till I got to the source code examples that I realized, I need a source code example format, right? So, but what you do is you just make sure that you copy those formats, promulgate them throughout the book so that every chapter has all the formats, especially chapter N, right? Because then you can create a new chapter from chapter N and just change the chapter name, right? And then all your formats are preserved across all your different books. FrameMaker actually makes this process pretty easy by letting you import formats from different files. And just to reiterate, it's an iterative process. You won't create all the new formats right off the bat, but as the work on the book progresses, you will come up with new ones. Once you get a handful of paragraph styles in chapter N, you'll use those to create the table of contents. You want to generate that because when you first, especially if you're working from scratch and you have no books that you have any examples and you have no experience, right? When you first create the table of contents, it's going to look really plain, right? Because you probably don't have any master pages. You've got no, your formatting has not been sufficiently carried over to the table of contents. So for every, like say for example, in this slide, you see I have a heading, a subheading, and a subheading 2. The N:sample document structure and formatting, that's actually a title format. When you create a table of contents, it creates additional formats called with the suffix TOC. It's not a dot TOC. It's going to be like heading TOC, subheading TOC. Those are new formats that it creates that apply to how the TOC entries will look in the table of contents, right? So you're going to create styles that will be in your chapters or chapter N. And then when you create the table of contents, you're going to say, well, I want heading and I want the title, subheading 1, subheading 2, however deep you want your table of contents to go. And like I say, formatting can be tricky, especially the first time. It requires tweaking reference pages. That if you look at the diagram, the graphic here in this slide, that table of contents, header at the top, that's on the master page. Okay, so there's a text box where the sample document structure and formatting appears, and then you've got your heading, subheading 1 and subheading 2. That's automatically generated, but the table of contents with those, left bar and those 2 underlines, that's a master page, and that is part of the index or the table of contents document itself. That's not automatically generated. So anyway, pulling all these elements together, the formats in chapter N, which will help you generate the, which pieces of, the chapter you want to include in the table of contents. That's all paragraph formatting. And then that will then spur the creation of table of contents specific formats, which you then have to tweak in order to get the table of contents to look like you want it to look. And don't be surprised when you first generate it, because it looks really plain and it does require work. But it's powerful. Let me just say that. It's very powerful. So don't give up. Now, index markers are used to generate the index. And just like the formatting for the table of contents, it's going to be very plain when you first generate it. So I included in this example just what it looks like when it first generates the index. There's no master page. There's only one column. There's little formatting for the actual text that gets output. So this is where you really got to tweak your formatting to get your index right. But what you do is in your chapter N, you have to add index markers in order to generate these entries, right? So this is an automatically generated index example, but it's there are index markers placed in chapter N to generate these entries, and I'll show you how to do that in the demo. Okay, let's create a FrameMaker book. I'm going to start by talking about my system. As you can see in front of you, I'm running on Macintosh, and FrameMaker only runs in Windows. So I use Parallels for the Mac, and I create a Windows virtual machine running Windows 10. So let's crank up FrameMaker. This takes a bit of time to load, not too long, but it runs well in this virtual machine. I've allocated 4 CPUs and 32 gigs of RAM. Okay, so that was not too slow. All right, before we get into FrameMaker, let's talk about creating the physical structure of the book. Okay, let's move this VM out of the way. and bring over the file system. Now, like I said, I'm working on a Mac. This folder name or this directory name is Technical Books. I'll talk more about it when I talk about Git and Configuration Management, or how to keep track of changes in your files as you edit your book. So let's start by creating a new folder called Sample Book. Sample Book, and I'll say first edition. And in this folder, I'll create the master book file. The master book file folder. Next, I will create the chapter N folder. And inside of chapter N, I will create the content folder and the figures folder. Now I'm going to use a figure to create the figure style, and let me go ahead and copy that over. So find it here, so I'll say copy and paste. Now just to show you, this is the image I'll use to create a figure in FrameMaker when I get to that part here pretty soon. So now that we have our file structure, or folder structure for our book, let's go ahead and pull FrameMaker back over and actually create the chapter N file and start working on our formats. Okay, let's pull back over the Windows virtual machine, and I will create a new FrameMaker document. I'll just click Portrait, and I'll go ahead and save that in the chapter N sample book, chapter N content, and I'll call that chapter N. Save. Now that you have this chapter file created, you can go ahead and close it, and we'll go ahead and create the book. And then once I create the book, I'll pull in chapter N into the book, and I'll work on the formatting so that we can then generate the table of contents and the indexes. Okay, to create a book, you can just click here on the book. Now let's go ahead and save this book. File, save. And we're going to navigate to the sample chapter master book file, and we will call this the same name, so I'll just call it sample book. Now the reason I'm only going to call it sample book and not sample book first edition is because this makes it more portable. When you want to create a new edition, these file names don't necessarily change. The folder name can change, right? And it just makes it easier to do. You don't have too many files to deal with. And now that we have our book file created and saved in the master book file folder, let's go ahead and add a book. So we could click on this icon that says Add File. So I'm going to click on that icon, and I'm going to navigate to Chapter N, Content, and include Chapter N into the book. And there we have a chapter in our book. And we can open this chapter by double-clicking it. There we go. Now we're opened to the chapter, and we can start fleshing out some formats so that we can then create a table of contents and an index. And we'll do that in the next section. Now that we have the chapter included in the book, let's work on just a handful of formats so that we can generate a table of contents. And this will give you a starting point from which to depart. First, a little tour. So up in the upper right-hand corner, you'll see this set of tabs. You'll be working mostly with the paragraph catalog, the paragraph designer. Not necessarily so much the characters, a little bit of the tables, designer only to create a table. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create, there's already some styles here. You can see I'm going to create, I like to name my styles very particular. So I'll be changing heading 1. I'll just create a heading, and then subheading 1, subheading 2, subheading 3, maybe subheading 4. You know, I'm not going to go overboard for formatting for this video, because really formatting takes up the lion's share of your time, right? So I'm going to name these. I'll say this is N colon. Actually, I'll just leave it N, and I'll say chapter N. I'll say sample formats and styles. Now, I like to have a style called chapter title. Okay, and then this way I can actually, you know, have a title section for the chapter in my table of contents. Now there is a title right down here on the right hand side in your paragraph catalog, but I'm going to create a new format, and I'm going to call it, over here in the paragraph designer, I'm going to call it chapter title, and just say create style. So that creates a new style. If you go to your paragraph catalog, you can see that we have a chapter title, and since that paragraph is selected, it's chapter title. So go back here. Now for chapter title, I'll leave the font the same size, because what I usually do is for the first page of the chapter, I will have a special master page, right? So while we're talking about master pages, this is just a brief intro, right? I'm looking at a body page here. When I click on the view, you can say view body page, view master page, and this shows you what the underlying format is of the page. Currently, it's a single page document, but generally speaking, if you have more than one page in a document, you need to define like a front, especially if they're chapters, right? So chapter usually starts on the right, on the right hand side as you open up a book. The right hand page is your chapter, and the left hand page is the end of the previous chapter, right? So you only have a right page defined in the master files, or the master pages view. So you would have to add a few more master pages, a left and a front, or a first. Okay, I'm not going to do that in this section or in this video, but I will have another part 2 of the series that goes more into detail on how to create these master pages and work with the reference pages. So speaking of reference pages, we could also take a view at the reference pages. Reference pages contain definitions for styling and formatting, and we'll work with this just a tad when we actually create the table of contents, but I'm not going to get into it here in the chapter itself, because you could create a whole video just on reference pages. So I'm going to go back to the body page view, and the next one I'm going to create is heading, right? So if we go to paragraph, we see that we have a heading 1 and a heading 2, but I just want a plain old heading. So I'm going to call this heading. Not heading 1, I'm going to call it heading and say create style. Oops, heading. So create style. Now, if we go back to our paragraph catalog, we see that we have a new style called heading. That paragraph's a heading. That paragraph's a chapter title. This paragraph's a heading. All right, so back to designer. Now, I'm going to, I think if I'll do 6 points. This will just be quick. So 6, let me make sure I hit the right key. 6 points and 6 points below. Okay. Alignment left. Font, I'll go apply changes. All right, so for font, I'm going to make it, I'll make it 14. Apply. Okay, update style. And I'll make it bold. Apply. I'm going to change the actual font type, just so we actually pizzazz this up a little bit. I have a font that's a favorite of mine called Peoria. Apply, and I may make that 18 just so we can see it a little bit better. Let me go up to 120. That way we can actually see the document. I'll do 140. There we go. 140. Sorry about that. So I'll make it 18. Hit apply and update the style. Now on basic, let's go to advanced. I like to put a frame above single line and a frame below single line. Apply. So there we go. We have a heading for a section. This would be like a section heading. Okay. You could name it whatever you want. I like the term heading. All right. Now I'm going to create, in the basic, you have a little check mark here that says, what's the next paragraph? And I'll just say, when I hit a return, it'll go to body. So I'm going to apply, update the style. Now, the next style is, I'm going to call a subheading. Actually, I put some body text here. Now, a great place to get body text is you could just say, this is some body text. Oops, delay. I'm a victim of delay. Body text. Or hit save. Let's go to, I think it's called ipso lorem. Let me grab a browser here. Ipsum lorem. There's a web page, right, for you technical writers probably know this better than I do, that allows you to grab just random like Latin fill text, right? So here we go. It's dummy text. You could copy. Well, let's see here. Here's the standard. I'll just go ahead and create that. Copy that. Command C. And then I'll have to reformat it because it'll probably copy that font format, which it did, right? So I'm just going to grab everything. I'll get rid of these quotes. Now you might want these quotes for like a body quote style. I could do that later, but I might not do that in this part one. So let's go ahead and just apply body to this. Let me change update style. Body font will be 12. Okay, New Times Roman. Apply. All right, so that's body. That's body. Okay, well, that's close enough. So update the style. Let's go to next one. So that's body. Subheading. Subheading 1. Actually, no space. Subheading 1. Subheading 2. Subheading 3. I'll do 3 subheadings. All right. And I think in here, I'm going to put a frame. Now, this is what I'm talking about, frames in FrameMaker. So you anchored frame, click on anchored frame, align left below current floating, and hit new frame. And it puts this frame right in the middle of your text flow. And with this frame, I can insert, I've got the frame selected, I can insert an image. So let me find image. And so I'm going to go up to chapter N, figures, bills. Okay, open that. Now it puts it in there. Now what I need to do is click on object properties, and I'll make the top 0 and the left. I'm just editing the image so it fits in the frame. And I make the width 5 and the height 5 and hit apply. So that makes it a little bit more manageable. So let me come down here with the frame and pull it down. This is what I'm talking about, like, you know, it doesn't ask any questions, tells you no lies, let you put things where you want to. I'll make this just a little bit smaller. Maybe not quite so small. Okay. So there's a figure. Now, what I do for figures is I'll put a text frame underneath of this figure. So the way that you get to the text frame is you come up here to this bar in between the book, sample book window and the chapter window, text frame. Draw the text frame right underneath of here. And I'll just hit set, double click, and now I'm in there, and I'll say figure 1. Right, and I like to put a alt dash like that, or a em hyphen, and I'll just say sample figure. All right, and then I'll make a new, so for this style, right, it's figure, I'll go ahead and create figure underscore caption. That's a new style, so I'm going to create that style. So if we go to our paragraphs, we see that we have a figure caption style now. And I will, I'll make that 10. Apply, update style. I'll change it from basic, let's see here, so first indent, alignment, I'll make it center, apply. All right, so, and then update style. So now we have a figure caption. Let me change this to point and then grab that frame and adjust it. You see what I'm talking about? Right, it does take a little bit of work to get your styling and your figures. Something happened here. Whoa. There we go. I must have made that thing huge somehow. All right, so I'm just trying to make this a little bit narrow, smaller, fits right under there. This is my frame, so bringing that back up. Okay, so I have a heading, I have body text, I have a title format. So I have a chapter title, a heading, a figure. Now I'm going to do a subheading. Let me back this up here. I'll do a subheading, and I'm going to create a new style. So subheading 1. Subheading 1. Create the style, and then verify it, right? So we're on subheading 1. Back to the paragraph designer. And alignment will be left. I will make this font. Let me select everything. I'll make this font New Times Roman. I'll say this is 14 since the heading is 15. Regular. Okay, apply. Update style. And I'll change the font from New Times Roman to Peoria. Oops. Not wrong one. Click the wrong one. To Peoria. Apply. Update style. Okay, now I'll do the same for heading 2. So what I'll do is I'll just apply heading 2 to, or subheading 1. I'll apply subheading 1 to that style. And that gives me most of the formatting. I'll go back to the paragraph catalog and I'll change that to a 2 and I'll hit create style. So that'll be a subheading 2. And I'll make the font 12, hit apply, update style. And then for heading 3, I'll go ahead and apply the subheading 2 to subheading 3 here. And so everything fits on the same page. I'll just back that up there. Subheading 3. This should be subheading 2. All right, so there's subheading 2. Back to the paragraph catalog. I'm going to change this to subheading 3, create that style, apply, and then I'm going to modify this font so that it's 10, 11. I'll just leave it at 12. But I'll make it italics so it stands out. So angle will be obliqued. Hit apply. All right, so there I've got essentially 3 different heading. I got a heading 1, heading 2. All right. Now, in between here, so let's see what I want to do next. I think what I want to do is I will create one more. I'll add a table. So insert a table, anchor frame, right here, table. Okay, so I'd say rows, body, rows 6, columns 5. Fine, and so it doesn't really matter. What we are looking for is this table heading here so that we can actually generate. So we can generate table of contents with what we have so far. Then we can generate a list of figures. Now I need to create to list of tables, have to create a table format. So I'm going to select this whole table and go to table format, table designer. Okay, so align, I'll make it align center. Start anywhere, title below table. All right, hit apply. Now, this is the table. Let's go to paragraph designer. This is the table title. I'm going to leave table title the same. Yeah, so I'll just say sample table. I'm just going to leave table title style the way it is for now. Table title. Okay, I might change the font to 10. Apply, update style. Okay, so it's table title, and this is a column, and this is a cell entry. Okay, these are different styles too, right? So if you click on column, you'll see up here it's a cell heading. If I click on cell entry, it's a cell body. Maybe I'll cell body, and then column is cell heading. You don't have to mess around with these now, but let me put a space there. But when you get into formatting, you're going to want to tweak all the formats to get your document looking. Hit save. Okay. Now we have enough. I'll just add some text here. There's really no need. I'll put this on 2. I'll come down here. So subheading 3. And the table is on page 2. The figure, the heading, is on page 1. Now, the last thing that we need to do before we generate, we can generate the TOC now, but I'm going to select, I'll say this, that's a T. Now I'm going to add index markers. So I selected a word, come over here to marker, index type, and create. Okay. So there it created an index marker. Now I'll select another one. Here's some, I'll take body, index marker, create. All right. There we go. That thing was hidden. I'll say lorem ipsum. You see it show up here, create. Dolor, that's a D. So what I recommend is selecting a few words so that you can, when you generate your index, you can see the different index, entries by, alphabetic order. Create. Here's volupte, create. Okay, we have everything we need. Hit save. To create table of contents, list of figures, list of tables, and index. We've put some stuff in the index. So let's go ahead and generate the table of contents in the next section. Okay, before we get started with creating the table of contents, I just wanted to return here. This paragraph, I copy and pasted this from the Lorem Ipsum website, and it wasn't formatting properly. What I had to do was I selected the entire paragraph, went up here in the upper right-hand corner, and gave it a font size and the same font type, And then that seemed to sync everything up, and now it's generating fine. So I have it set at 10. Let me go ahead and make a change to the body, make it a little bit bigger. Okay. Click on font, and I will make that 12. Hit apply and update style. So you see that all the text went to the same size. Okay. Now our formatting is in place. Let's generate the table of contents. First, save your file if you made any format changes. And come over here to Insert, Table of Contents, create standalone table of contents. Now it'll say you can create table of contents or can place this document in a new book. I'll say just for this document. Actually, let me select the book. Hit cancel, select the book. Okay, not the chapter, but the book. And let's see if you right click. Nope. Okay, so I've got the book selected. Insert, standalone, table of contents. So we get a dialog here that says you want to set it up before. So right now it created the file. See where it created the file in that left sample book column over here to the left. You'll see sample book TOC. So that's the file. So now we're going to select the styles that we want to include in the table of contents. So I will select chapter title, and I will select heading, and then I will select subheading 1, subheading 2, and subheading 3. Hit OK, and all right, everything looks fine. Update. So now it's generating the table of contents from the formats that are in chapter 1. So hit save. Now let's open up table of contents. Okay, so like I said, there's no formatting in the table of content document, and I'm not going to create it, right? This video is getting on the verge of too long. I have a part 2 where I go into formatting, but you're going to have to create master pages and tweak on the reference pages, tweak the style. I will say this, that if you look at these styles, you'll see that that's chapter _ title TOC. So this is in the TOC book here. Okay, so heading, it's heading TOC, right? Whereas opposed to the chapter, let's go ahead and save this first off, right? And I'll go back to the chapter here in a bit. Okay, so sample book. All right. Anyway. Select on subheading. It's subheading 1 TOC, subheading 2 TOC. All right, you see the heading text, right? That's the heading, and then the page number. So in the reference document, you'll have to tweak on the format to get it to format the way you want as a table of contents. All right, let's move on to index generation. Okay, we just completed our table of contents, so I'm going to close the table of contents, and I'm back to chapter N, and we've put in our index markers. So let's go ahead and I'll just select the book here. Before I actually click that button, let me move this out of the way, and we'll take a look at the master book file folder. We see that it placed the table of contents in the master book file folder because that's where the book is located, or the book file, I should say. So back to the Windows, and we're going to insert a standard index. So it'll come after chapter N, and it's already put it there. You can see that was pretty fast. So we'll go ahead and include index markers. You can make an index of authors, comments, conditional text, cross-reference, equations, HTML macros. It's pretty complex what you can do. So I'm going to hit OK and update, and you'll see that the index it creates is pretty plain and simple as well, just like the table of contents. All right, let's go ahead and open this up. There we go. So it too, right, will require formatting the master pages and the reference pages. Let me show you what a complex index looks like. If I pull up a file, open, recent files, C# book. So I'm going to open up C# for Artists, which is a pretty big book. Open up the index for that. And we see that this is what, here we have like an index page. That's a fancy title for the index, right? And then we have different subsection formatting. It's a 3-column layout, right? It's a pretty long index. It's very detailed. This is just, FrameMaker is just incredible for creating indexes, but working on the formatting for this, especially if you're starting from scratch, is quite involved, right? So go ahead and save the sample. I'm going to close the C# for Artists book. And so we have our index. Okay, although it needs work. Now let's go ahead and create like a list of figures, and then that'll be the last thing. You can create list of tables if you want or need them. So the save, and I'm going to roll right into list of figures here. So insert, well, let's do this. Close the index, right? We're in chapter N. I just select on the book and insert list of. Okay, so we're going to go list of figures. Now I like to have a list of figures and a list of tables. You can have paragraphs, list of markers, references, right? I'll go list of figures. And then I'm going to insert figure caption and hit OK. And OK. Every time I create one of these, you'll see this little list in the generate in this update book, right? Every time I hit update, it updates everything. So whenever you make edits, whenever you add different styles, whenever you add more index markers, there's 2 ways to do that. Mostly you can go like edit, update book, or you can just hit this little update book icon here, and it'll just perform an update, give you the window, and you just hit update. So let's take a look at list of figures. And like the index, it's very sparse, right? It's going to look like a table of contents, but it's a list of your figures. You're going to have to format that to make sure that it's formatted properly. Save that file. And that's it for generating a complex book. The rest is, iteration, right? How do you want it to look? It took me a while. I'll open up C# for Artists again. File, open, recent, C# book. All right. So it takes a while to get let's go to a page where we have some actual source code. It takes a while to get your formats worked out. Obviously, if you're writing a complex technical book, right, with lots of, make sure this opens up. Close that down. There we go. There's chapter 9. Shows up. All right. So this is how I like to format my books. Right. This is the first page of a chapter. You see the cursor up here. This is the title. Okay. It's invisible because I want to have a separate title paragraph, but I don't want it to be visible. And then this is a text frame. Let me select over here. That's a text frame right there. Not a text frame. It's just a frame, right? This is a text frame. This is a frame that can have other frames inside of it. This is why frames are crazy in FrameMaker, right? FrameMaker is the most incredible page layout. I type straight into FrameMaker. I don't use, very rare occasions do I use Microsoft Word to actually create the text. I create the books right in FrameMaker. I lay them out. I work with them in this format, right? So you can see, let's go down and find some source code, right? So here we go, we're getting there. Tables, diagrams. This particular diagram is drawn straight into FrameMaker. This is kind of a holdover from the earlier book, right? These diagrams are created with the help of a different program. screenshots, source code. The source code formatting is tricky, right? Because every line of code has a line number, right, that I'm referencing. And then this is an example. If I click on this paragraph, that's a example code caption. That's a figure caption down there. So I have list of codes, list of examples. It's just incredible, right? So you can create very complex layouts with FrameMaker. And that's it. So let's talk next about, like, when you make changes, when you have a big project, right? You certainly don't want to lose your work to some accident. And you'd like to increase your mobility of, like, instead of having to drag around hard drives all over the place. So I'm going to show you briefly talk about configuration management using using Git and GitHub, and then a task manager, JIRA, to help yourself stay on track when you're working on these book projects. Okay, see you in the next section. I'd like to talk now about workflow and focus on configuration management and task tracking. When I work on a book, I'd like to make sure that I don't obliterate something that I've been working on. If I make a mistake, I'd like to roll back my mistake, right? So, you could do this manually by making a copy and, saving it off and then like going searching for it and pulling it back. But as a software engineer, I use Git for my source code. So I use Git to do configuration management on my book files as well, right? So I have a repository. It's github.com/pulpfreepress. The ones for the book files are private, right? But the source code repositories are public. And so the workflow for the way I actually edit and create content on a book is, as the writer, I'm making edits in FrameMaker, and those files and all that content that you see logically organized in FrameMaker is stored on the file system. And I have Git installed on my computer. I use a Macintosh, right? But then I have to run FrameMaker in Microsoft Windows, as you'll see here pretty soon. And so what happens is whenever I modify a file in FrameMaker, that file is modified on the file system. Git keeps track of those modifications. There's a local repository on my machine, a Git repository, and then I have to do add and commit whenever I'm satisfied with the changes, right? So whenever I think the changes are fine, then I'll do a add anything that's been modified, and I'll commit to the local repository. And when I think I'm ready to push all this up to the remote repository, I'll do a Git push. Okay, so this is the one way. I can also travel, which I'm not showing here. So when I travel and I want to work on my book, I do a Git pull or a Git checkout for whatever I'm doing. You'll notice in this graphic that on the command line at the end, it says /volumes, RAID4T1 data /technical books. That's the repository. And then C# book 3rd edition is the folder that the 3rd edition of C# for Artist it resides in. And then you'll see a CF3, is it CFA, C# for Artist 3E, which is 3rd edition, -14. Now that's a JIRA ticket number. That's the way I number my branches in Git, right? So whenever I have a main branch, obviously, and then whenever I want to work on a particular set of tickets, I will go ahead and, create a new branch, work on that branch, and then I'll post the adds, commits, and pushes back to the repository until I'm satisfied. Then I'll merge those changes to the main repository. Now, if you're not a software engineer and you're just a writer and you just like glazed over when I had this conversation, it's not beyond your abilities to understand, the benefits of having a repository. So especially when, like I said earlier, when I travel, right, I don't have to carry around a disk with, the latest thing. It may be on my computer. Of course, I have a local repository, but if I'm connected to the internet, then I can save my changes back to if my laptop gets destroyed and I've committed my changes to the remote repository, then I'm still in business, right? I like to work this way, right? And so in the center of this slide, you'll see it's not only used for book files, but also for the source code examples, because these books that I write are about programming. And so there's separate repositories, one for the book files and one for the source code examples, all right? One final thing I'd like to talk about is how I keep track of tasking. I guess you could use a notebook with some yellow stickies, right? I did that for a long time. But as a software engineer, I started using JIRA issue and project tracking. And so JIRA, you can get a free account and you just create tickets, roadmaps, scheduling. And then whenever I create a new book or I'm working on a book, I put a ticket for all the different things I need to do. In this example, I'm doing a 3rd edition for C# for Artists. So I have tickets for all the different chapters I want to make edits to and what those edits are. Here's an example. You see chapter 13, add new topics. That's the task. And then in the description, what I want to accomplish. The nice thing about JIRA, right, is you can have detailed, like a wiki part of it, right, if you wanted to share that with friends. And I can link to other repositories. So I actually have a link to the source code repositories on my JIRA, so I can see, like, if I'm making changes to any of the code as part of my edits to the chapter, I can link to that source code repository, and then I can see those changes in the source code. Pretty convenient. So yeah, I'm a big fan of using JIRA for keeping tasks, track of tasking. And big enterprises use JIRA for their technical writer teams, right? You know, whenever they have to modify a document, they get a JIRA task. A help desk ticket might be submitted, links to the JIRA task, right? So this is industry standard stuff, and I use it myself, and I love it.